Good afternoon. I am Anissa Mumtaz Nabila from the CNN News, and right here I am about to interview some experts to talk about the climate change problem. Good afternoon. My name is Anissa Mumtaz Nabila, and I'm here as a respondent from CNN. I am here with Mr. Panagari from UNFCCC to talk about climate change and its relation with global governance. Mr. Panagari, what do you think about the recent insurgence of environmental issues in global governance discussion?
Okay, thank you for the questions. As what we know in this dynamic era in the global community, each countries in the international community tries to win the competitions and try to beat other countries to win the competitions in the international community. What I want to say here regarding the competitions is the competitions where the countries can be more advanced in comparison towards other countries. For example, in the economic aspect, as the countries, we can invest so much on the industrializations. We can create lots of corporations inside of our countries in order to gain the profit as much as possible. For take an example, when there is lots of factory inside of country, where there is lots of industry in our countries that can produce lots of pollution in the air, for example, or can produce lots of unreusable waste, for example, for our environmental. I do believe that this kind of conditions, if we lack this kind of conditions continuously in the futures, it can create such environmental damage inside of our countries. Lots of countries that thinks that environmental is less important in comparison toward the profit, and we here as the UNFCCC want to protect and want to prevent the bigger harms that might be exist in the futures if we still let this kind of conditions continuously happen inside our countries.
I see. Thank you very much for your answer and your time to be here.
Okay, thank you so much, Anissa, for the questions.
Good afternoon. I am here right now with Miss Audrea, a member of Greenpeace that attended the COP24 meeting in Katowice, Poland. Miss Audrea, I have a question for you. What is the framework of the current global climate governance?
Well, the basis framework of the current global climate governance is the Kyoto Protocol, and it was agreed in Kyoto, Japan on December 1997, and it came into force starting from February 2005, and it was made based on the scientific consensus that global warming is real and it is occurring, and the predominant cause of it might have been human-made CO2 emissions. And well, it binds 38 industrialized countries to reduce GHG emissions by an average of 5.2% below the 1990 levels between the year 2008 and the year 2010. There are currently 192 parties to the protocol.
And what is the goal and the position of the Kyoto Protocol?
Well, the very main goal of the Kyoto Protocol was to reduce global warming by reducing greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere to a level that will prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. And regarding the position, the Kyoto Protocol is one of the very first significant evidence of global climate governance. Under the hands of the UNFCCC, the Kyoto Protocol has become an agreement that was recognized globally and was complied by a lot of countries in the world.
So thank you for your answer, and thank you for giving your time to us.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And here right now, I am with Ms. Azra from the Climate Policy Initiative to talk about the fair making of global climate governance. What is your assessment about the climate change negotiation in terms of governance?
The UN's climate governance, with the COP meetings which have been held every year ever since 1995, is based on what we call a schism with reality. It's true that the governance bubble has been gradually formed in the early 2000s, believing that it could take charge of the world to move the fight against climate change forward with the help of economic tools such as the carbon market, and come up with the general treaty settings to reduce carbon emissions. At the Copenhagen summit in 2009, we thought we were saving the world, but none of this has happened. It was an illusion, as at the same time we have witnessed an acceleration in the real world, with the backdrop of fierce economic competitions between countries and increasing globalization and the universalization of the Western development model. A second important point is the mobilization of civil society has increased global awareness of the challenges of the climate issue and brought about a local and national reappropriation of the issue. Consequently, we have been seeing in the last few years a more bottom-up approach of the global climate governance. And finally, new emerging countries fit within the geopolitical climate issue, which has changed drastically from the 1990 to the 2010. For example, China has exceeded the USA in 2006 and became the largest carbon emitters in the world. These countries, which were only observers in the negotiations in the 1990s, are now major actors in them. And China, for example, China played a decisive role in the adoption of the Paris Climate Agreement.
Thank you very much for your time and for your answer. Thank you. And right now, I am here with Ms. Shelda from the UNICEF. Ms. Shelda, for the question, how urgent it is to take action for the climate change and how can it affect the children?
According to a UN report, unless we act now, we're gonna face the climate change catastrophe within 12 years. A half degree of extra warming will risk the lives of millions of people. And from what I see, children are especially vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, especially those who often live in the world's poorest and most polluted environment. And according to UNICEF, by 2040, almost 600 million children will live in areas with extremely limited water resources. And now, estimatedly 260 million children live in areas with the risk of flood, threatening to contaminate water resources, which will increase the spreading of disease. And children will be the most affected by those issues, and if we don't address this crisis, many of these children will have a higher risk of death, disease, and malnutrition.
So, do you think how can we fix this problem?
We can fix this problem by child organization UNICEF could work with the government and the rest of world community to reduce the impact of climate disaster on children by providing them with sustainable access to water. And we could also address environmental degradation by tackling issues such as air pollution in urban areas, risk from chemicals, waste, polluted water, and lack of green and clean areas for children to play.
Thank you very much for your answer and your time.
Thank you.
And here right now, I am with Miss Aulia, a member from Women's Environment and Development Organization. Miss Aulia, why is women's participation in international climate negotiations so important?
Women is getting impacted by climate change more than men. Why? It's because women's role as primary caregivers and providers of food and fuel make them more vulnerable when flooding and drought occur. The 2015 Paris Agreement has made specific provision for the empowerment of women, recognizing that they are disproportionately impacted and deciding to enhance the participation of women in climate negotiations. Women, the representation in international negotiation will make a little difference for them when in real world, where women who are the most vulnerable to climate change have no participation in decision making, although they are the ones who bear the burden of climate change and the burden of adaptation. Women is the most impacted, but women's representation in negotiation is so low. That is why gender equality issues and making women have a representation in decision making is so important to be considered. I think that's all that I can answer for your question.
Thank you very much for your time and for your answer.
Thank you.
And here right now, I am with Miss Yang Yuan from the UNFCCC. Ms. Yang Yuan, is there any agreement that can be a solution for this climate change problem?
Yes, there is one example is the Paris Agreement.
Can you tell us what is the Paris Agreement?
The Paris Agreement is an agreement with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. We are calling UNFCCC, dealing with greenhouse gas emissions, mitigation, adaptation, and finance, signed in 2016. The agreement's language was negotiated by representatives of 196 state parties at the 21st Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC in Le Berquis near Paris, December 2015.
Then how does the Paris Agreement work?
Under the Paris Agreement, each country must determine, plan, and regularly report on the contribution they will undertake to mitigate global warming. No mechanism forces a country to set a specific target should go beyond previously set targets. Thank you very much for your answer, Ms. Yang Yuan. Okay, have a nice day. Thank you.
In conclusion, one of the reasons why this climate change problem exists is that human is competing with each other, especially in industrial sector. That if they do it without knowing the consequences, it will affect badly for the world. For the example, it's like the waste from the factories. If this problem goes on without any solution, it would be a risk for the living of the human being, as it could lead to drought, desertification, hunger, and malnutrition. And this climate will extremely dangerous for children, as they are very vulnerable. Some organizations like Greenpeace, UNICEF, Women Environmental and Development Organization, and the convention like UNFCCC are trying their best to find the solution for this problem. UNFCCC itself used the Kyoto Protocol as their base, and one of the results of their convention is the Paris Agreement that deals with the greenhouse emission mitigation, adaptation, and finance. This agreement was signed in 2015. All actors should participate in fighting climate change, as this is an issue that could only be solved through good global governance system. With all pledges that we have and the agreement that has been agreed, we should try our best to follow and make the world a better place. Even women's participation is also important, since they are also one of the most impacted groups from this climate change issue. This is CNN News, and thank you for watching.